Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm talking about the latest episode of The Outpost. So in this episode, a lot of things went down. Obviously last episode, Talon got her revenge and wiped out all the bones. It seems that she ended up sending Baphnero back, because she does look at his arm and realize that he's the one that saved her 13 years ago, but still sends him back nevertheless. Goes back and finds the wolf dying. It's kind of interesting once again, like, even now knowing the truth, she has very complicated feelings, because it's like, this is the man who killed so much of her family, but he's the man that was kind of there for her when she needed him. So it's like, it leaves her very conflicted, because she's like, why didn't you tell me the truth? It's like, if I told you the truth, you would have just stabbed me. Would you have listened to anything I had to say? So he's telling her that someone known as the Dragman is coming after her. And later on, it's something that Johnson kind of translates, that basically there's a word kind of close to it that basically means death. And part of me was wondering, is that Dreg? But then I think there's a lot of stuff I misunderstood. Because it turns out Dreg is just an ambassador. I thought he was like the head honcho of this whole Prime Order thing, but he's just an ambassador. There's a higher authority to him. So even Dreg answers to somebody else, like when it comes to this whole Prime Order thing. At least that's why I'm assuming. Maybe he's not at the top. But the fact that he has the name Ambassador makes me think he's kind of a representative of somebody else. So maybe the person who gave him the orders in the first place. Or like I said, not unless I'm completely misunderstanding it, and he is the top dog, which I thought for the longest time. Either way, we'll have to wait and see. But I wonder who this whole Dragmore situation is about. Not Dragmore, Dragman. Like, what that's all about, and it being a death situation. Like, is this someone that's the manifestation of death, or are we literally talking about death itself is coming after her? Because is it kind of one of those things of, like, it's some grand, like, design thing where it's like, no, like, even the gods and death themselves want you dead because of what you are and what you represent as a black blood. I wonder, is it going to be something like that? Talks about the fact is that, she needs to fulfill the prophecy. He literally even gave her a dagger that he made that has the prophecy inscribed on it. And it's almost kind of messed up in this weird way, because the wolf says, like, what he did to her and her people was not his finest hour, but he's glad it happened, because if it hadn't happened, he would have never met her and looked into her eyes or saw Baphnero save her that day. That changed everything for him. And once again, he told Shek last episode, is like, he doesn't mind, because at least he had done some good in his life, making up for the terrible that he had done by making sure that Talon stayed alive and informing her of everything the moment she, came to the outpost and informed her of her destiny for, the change that's coming to this world. So at least he thinks that at least I potentially set things in motion for there to be some good. And at least she survived. And then he told her about this thing known as the Book of Names, which we later on know it has another name known as the Vex, which is interesting, because it turns out this book it literally is a book of names. And it was like, what's the names? The names of every Lakiri that exists in the other world, which is interesting, because maybe they had brought that up before. Like, I knew I didn't really know knowing their names mattered. It turns out it does, because by knowing their name, I guess that's something that's kind of popped up in other things, or at least in some, I don't know what reward would be, lores and stuff like that. By, like, knowing someone's name, you have power over them. That's something I've heard in different, like, stories and stuff like that, like, of lores or things. So I think that's kind of fascinating, and it kind of applies in this case. It's like, if she knows their name, she can call to them. She has power over them because she knows who they are. So it's just kind of an interesting detail. Her actually giving him a proper burial and everything. Once again, it's like the complication behind, like, oh yeah, this is the man who killed my family, but he also did so much for me. So also bringing in Janza, who does that little light humble brag of, like, oh yeah, like, I know 12 languages, like, I can read 12 different languages, but sadly I can only speak 3. And then like, Talon being so impressive, he's like, oh, it's but he reads all these books for her because he's trying to read up on everything, because he ends up finding out about the Lakiri and stuff like that, finding out about what the Book of Names is. So that's kind of interesting. While all at the same time, hit the whole situation with Eleanor, like, he doesn't want to go deal with this whole like Gallows Rock situation because it's like, oh, meet with the Calypso supplier, but it's like, I don't want to, Mom, because it's like they're most like, I mean, because he's still saying that it's dangerous to get mixed up in this game, and she doesn't care because for her it's like she's kind of been low ranking her entire life. She wants to change that. This is an opportunity to become a big player in this game and make a whole bunch of money, make a name for herself. Like, because if she becomes the supplier, if she can get her hands on Calypso, like she can really get people in the palm of her hand. It's something she had said previously. Like I said, like people's hands will shake just to get a drink. People will sell their own kids for Calypso. So it's that much in demand for people. So, but Jonzo doesn't want to do it just because he knows it's just going to cause more, you know, probably problems like, well, not just for him, but his family and just other people. Like, because it's like, once again, it's like, we don't know who we're doing business with. So, like, that's the downfall of it. But his mom didn't want to listen. She's even being like, oh, how could you be so ungrateful to me? I'm the one that took you in. I clothed you. I could easily throw you back on the streets and stuff like that. Shows you the fact that she doesn't care about much of her kids. I mean, let's not forget about Bill. It's like, Bill's the one she relied on a lot, but it's like, I didn't care too much for Bill. And Mutt, he's an idiot. You're a smart one, but if I need be, I can just cast you aside or whatever. And it's like, man, you were kind of vicious. It's interesting, too. It's only a little part of the episode, but Jonzo's research into the plaguelings, he ends up popping one of the boils on the hand or whatever, and a whole bunch of flies are inside of it. So it's like, is that supposed to, like, what's that supposed to represent? I mean, is that because, does that mean, like, when people become plaguelings, they become dead flesh? Are they kind of similar to zombies or something? Is that what that's supposed to represent? Like, oh, there was a whole bunch of maggots on the inside? Or the fact is, you know, still representing that is dead flesh? That the moment plaguelings die, like, they become the risen dead that, like, is it kind of like a Walking Dead situation of, like, an infection kills you and then turns you into one of those monsters? So it's a kind of a similar to a Walker thing, or, like, what that's about. Like I said, it's such a small thing, but maybe we'll kind of expand upon it later on. Maybe it's supposed to represent the fact is that it spreads. I mean, I assumed it was flies, but maybe it could have been some other bugs, but who knows? I'm kind of leaning towards my initial thought, but like I said, we'll see. But I do love that this episode sorry, getting a little tongue-tied. I also love that this episode does something we haven't seen before. Jonzo and Talon, like, spending a longer period of time together, because he invites her along on this adventure. She's like, but, you know, it's like, oh, you're asking me for a small favor. He's like, well, I mean, the fact of the matter is I'm translating these books for you. So he's like, come on, there'll be plaguelings and bandits. It'll be fun. Come on. And it's just like the little back and forth between them was such an interesting thing this episode. I thought was kind of neat. Her being like, yeah, you probably won't survive, that you might get killed. And he's like, you really think so? And then, like, the whole aspect of, like, the two people that tried to rob them, the performers, it was a brother and sister duo. And then Talon broke the dude's arm and his leg. And then Jonzo, like, happened to be missing the swipe because he bent down to pick the money up when the lady tried to swipe a knife on him. And she's like, duck, Jonzo. And then she's, like, throwing daggers and Talon's, like, blocking him and stuff. I was like, that's pretty damn impressive. And just a serious look on Jonzo's face and stuff. I feel like you never see that demeanor on him. And then the whole situation, the dude gets left behind by his sister. And he's like, oh, God, please. And Jonzo's like, no, let's just go. And he's like, yes, please listen to your man. He's not my man. Then your lover? And Jonzo being like, I wish. And she looks up at him. He's like, I wish that we could stay and talk, but we can't. She's like, maybe I should break something other than your arm and your leg. Cause, you know, maybe I should break a little something else. Both him and Jonzo respond, no, because I guess as a man, Jonzo's like, no. No man should have to suffer that pain. And just like, oh, I'm so thankful. You should thank my lover. And he's like, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to play my instrument. I'm like, you're left beaten down and broken and your sister left you. I love it. It's just kind of, like I said, it ended a back and forth of her teasing him a little bit, being like, you better translate that because you probably won't survive. He's like, really? And she's walking away and she's smiling, just kind of busting his balls a little bit. Like I said, I love the dynamic between them. Like, they're playing that up more. I also love her bringing up the point of, like, you're taking these barrels because they're filled with gold, but how do you know your mom didn't just put rocks in it? He's like, look, she wouldn't do it. And he has to stop because he's like, honestly, that kind of shows you how shady his mom is, because he's been like, yeah, that could possibly be something my mom would actually do. And it's like, oh, it turns out we got a little gold. Talon takes something. He's like, no, what are you doing? It's like, she's like, Talon's like, I doubt they'll count it. you don't know. These could be some rough people. They might rough estimate it, but also it's like, with situations like this, I mean, you've seen enough mob things for people to be like, or crime dramas and stuff like that, for people to be like, nah, we count the money. But to be fair, this is like in the Middle Ages and stuff like that, so no one's really going to take time. It's like, oh, let me count out this gold. It's like, oh, that looks like a good chunk of gold. So Talon's like, I'm doing this anyway, so I'm going to be compensated just in case, because once again, you most likely will die. Obviously, she will do whatever it takes to protect Jonzo because she actually cares about him. Well, she cares about her too. Obviously, he needs her help in this because, like, I mean, initially she was like, oh, take your brother Mutt along with you. She was like, no, I'm going to die. Like, I can't trust Mutt to keep me safe. Who's the one person that can definitely keep him safe? Talon. So I'm very, like I said, that Calypso storyline keeps building and growing into something. So now Talon's kind of mixed up and involved in it. I'm curious to see what that does in the long run. Like I said, the fact is that Jonzo keeps warning his mom about this means things will not end well for her in some regard in this situation. Once again, we don't know who's involved in the situation. Might be some people connected to Prime Order. It's what my thought process has constantly been about it, because Worm said it himself. You won't believe me if I told you who I'm working with. So there's that. Then there's the whole situation with Garrett and Gwen. He comes to talk to Gwen. She's like, I'm glad to hear Talon's safe. That's because of you, right? He's like, no. Then how? It's complicated. He's like, there's something I got to tell you about Talon. And she's like, I already know. And they say it at the same time. She can summon demons. You're in love with Talon. Both of them go, wait, what? I love that. Which is like, you can make that estimation too. I think he is a little infatuated with her, but I think he legitimately is in love with Gwen. But she, you know, I just love that. And then they end up talking later on, Talon and Gwen. And Talon learns the truth about Gwen's heritage and the whole situation. And asking her to join into the fight, learning about the demon situation. It's like, oh, how many are there? Like, oh, the Lakiri in particular, I sent back. I know its name. And that, I guess that was enough to make her go, wait a minute, Book of Names. Now she knows what it's all about. Which is interesting, too, because Drake is looking for the same book as well. I guess because the bones never returned, he figured, like, okay, so they're probably dead. I mean, I doubt word's gotten back. I mean, that was literally just last episode, so they literally just arrived yesterday. So, but I guess he took that as precaution because now that he knows there's at least one more alive, I guess he'd rather find the Book of Names now and get rid of it just in case, you know, they fail him or something. Again, because they failed before, so who's to say they won't fail again? I felt so bad for that guy who, at the end of it, what was his name? Carrick? Like, he was connected to some order that I guess there was some order he belonged to that, believed in all this because they're the ones who had the Book of Names, is at some altar and stuff like that, and an altar of fire in particular. So I'm guessing, like, him and his people believed in his prophecy. Before he died, he ended up shouting the prophecy because Dreg was going to was killing his family in front of him, and so there must be a lot of people, because it's interesting because Jonzo had said it himself that the reason why they, like, much like the reason why they killed off a lot of the Black Bloods, the Yendrians, I think that's it, because he was correcting Talon on how it was actually. So I think that was it, Yendrian, I think. It's a language a lot of that stuff is written in, and I'm guessing the prophecy in particular is written in that same language. So probably like the Book of Names is written in the same language as well, because all the people of that culture who could speak that language or write that language were all killed, because that way the Prime Order could be like, oh yeah, it says this and it says that. And I'm sure, like, it also prevents anyone from ever knowing that. I would assuming the blacksmith probably knew some. I mean, he kept books on it, so he dedicated 13 years to all that stuff, so he probably picked up something in that time. I'm curious to know when in particular, because we know the Black Bloods were wiped out 13 years ago. Was the same thing for the Yendarians, or was it Yendrians, or was it at some later point in time? Big question in that regard, too. Maybe in the long run, it doesn't matter as much, but still. So, it is interesting. Like, obviously, like, nothing's come of it yet because, you know, but Gwen is asking Talon, like, hey, join us as we topple the Prime Order. But it's like, will she join the fight? I think she will, because in the end, you know, the person behind all this is connected to the Prime Order. So she has ample reason to join the fight as well. There's even the side that where it's like, oh yeah, Gwen's like, I still hope we can be friends. It's a complicated situation. You kind of put me up to die. Wither's kind of blackmailed you, but still, because it still feels like you put yourself forward. But it's kind of like, she has a responsibility not only to herself, but to all her people for all that was sacrificed for her. there's that whole situation where they were meeting up. They ended up coming across those Primordial guys. I was like, what is Garrett going to do? I was like, he's reaching for a dagger. Like, is he going to do it? Stabs the dude. I was like, oh, and proceeds to fight everyone. Also, the Commander Calcazar is pretty damn skilled himself. Even Garrett was like, oh, he's still got some fight in him. He handled it. So pretty much all the other soldiers pretty much got wiped out. The ones that were there, except for Calcazar and Garrett. Oh, there's like some that were still alive because a few were shooting arrows at him when he was chasing Gwen. And I love Garrett just throws the sword, stabs him from the back, and you see the blade sticking out his neck, and he just lumps over. I'm like, that was pretty brutal. And then him and Gwen kiss. So it's like, oh yeah, there's still something there. I'm sure no matter what her situation is, Gwen's still like, no, like, I love you, I care about you, like, I'm not going to let my position and my royalty affect that. It's actually kind of interesting, and I thought it was kind of an interesting thing in itself, like her being like, why would these people follow me? Just because of who my father was? I haven't really done anything to warrant their loyalty, but it's like the fact of the matter is your blood is who your blood is. The fact is that, you know, the gods are in your blood, that you were sent here you were made specifically because of God's wish to help make things right. So that's kind of your purpose. And Calcazar is kind of like, yeah, because if not, like, Gwen's sacrifice would be all for naught. And she's like, okay, I'll fulfill the promise to both my fathers, which is sweet because it's like, oh, she's, you know, even though you're pretending to be her father, you've still looked after her all these years, so she still thinks of you like a father to her, so. I was wondering how she was going to prove her. It's like, oh yeah, I'm like, of course no one's just going to accept that you are the princess, or at least the queen now, in that regard. But it's like, oh yeah, she went down and presented herself to two people. It's like, oh, I know you and I know you. And she kind of, well, she remembered one's name and it kind of almost got the other one's name, but they're people who were from the kingdom. Like, it's like, oh yeah, I know you because you took care of the stables, you took care of the garden. So that's how they know each other. And I thought it was so interesting how, I mean, obviously, you convince a few people, that's enough to get them to convince other people. So now she's got her army. I thought she would have revealed some royal seal or something like that, but I guess that wouldn't be enough. It's actually kind of interesting because we also learned a little bit about Garrett, too. It's like his mom was killed because she wouldn't accept the advances of a covenant officer, and she got her throat slit for that. He was 4 years old. That's like, wow. Which I guess that also makes you understand why Withers feels the way that he does. I was about to say, because I literally lay it something, because I'm about to say, oh, what about his dad? It's like, right, we know who his dad is, it's Withers. Now you kind of understand why he was super pissed when Garrett joined the order, because it's like, you literally joined the group that killed your mom. I mean, all the crazy, shady shit they've done in the past anyway, but that on top of it is like, you have a personal reason to hate them and you joined them, you know? So that's kind of interesting. Which we see Withers pop up a little bit this episode. I'm curious what's going to happen, you know, because obviously, like, Talon is going to be staying around a little while because of the whole Book of Names thing. And that was something I brought up before. I was like, this is all about the outpost, but it's like, obviously, so the outpost is going to be like the centerfold of the story. So we're venturing a little bit out here and there in certain regards, but it always kind of falls back to the outpost. I'm sure that's going to be like the last line of defense is going to be where this all kind of goes to like, ahead essentially, you know? And that's how I'm chalking it up. So Withers kind of got what he wanted, and he now knows the truth. And I mean, like I said, he got the answer to both big riddles that was flowing through his mind. So I'm curious to see, because obviously the time will come when Talon would have to fulfill the prophecy and like summon all the slayers of men to help with this situation. So I'm assuming like they've got their army and she's got her own army, but it's going to be interesting to see. Like, you kind of get the feeling it's going to lead to that, but I'm curious what exact circumstances are going to lead to Talon wanting to join their side. Like I said, she has ample motive to, but we'll see whether she really decides to do that, whether it's going to be something she decides to do on her own. I mean, there's very few people in this world she really got close to or trust. That she has a mixed relationship with Gwen. Things are positive with her and Garrett, and things were good between her and Jonzo, and she lost on the other person she really trusts, the wolf, so, or rather the blacksmith, because he'd rather be the blacksmith than the wolf. But now we also have this lady at the end named Essa, who's been summoned by Dreg to find the book. I guess at some point in time, her and Talon are definitely going to cross paths, especially since Talon's looking for the book too. What's interesting is that little girl that's with Drake. I wonder what that's about because Drake kind of looks back to her and she kind of nods her head. So it's like, is she some higher authority or position or something like that? Like the reason it almost looks like it almost seems like a Gwen and Garrett situation and like of like the hierarchy in that situation. I don't know, or is she something else? Like, the fact she's there and she's reading this book and she's touching it and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, there's definitely got to be something special about that kid. Because the fact is, why would you bring her there? And the fact of the matter is, you're killing people in front of her. Seems like she doesn't care. Like, she's wearing Prime Order stuff. So it's like, you've got to be somebody important. In what regard? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out soon enough. But I'm very interested to see where all this takes us in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good